There was a refrain in the Biden administration that we heard over and over again: nothing for Ukraine without Ukraine. We've come a long way from there. Is it possible to achieve peace without the input from European partners and Kyiv itself?
I think the administration is seeking to get that input. I know that General Randy George and the Army Secretary met with General Syrski today in Ukraine, and they're seeking first a military appreciation and also an understanding of exactly what's needed to strengthen Ukraine's defense in this. But as you all were saying, there's a lot we don't know about this plan. And the difficulty is the security guarantees and the breach of the concept of, hey, if you can invade and you can take it and you can hold on for a while, the world's going to give up on it, it'll be yours. And that's a dangerous principle to set loose. We have tried our best for 80 years not to allow aggression to pay. And you can argue that Russia's paying a terrible price for this, et cetera, which they are, but so is Ukraine. And the consequences of a faulty deal will echo for a long time. So it's not just a matter of getting the shooting to stop temporarily. Putin will take a pause whenever it suits him, if he thinks he can gain from the pause. But the real question is, will he give up his long-held aim of controlling all of Ukraine and undercutting all of NATO's post-1997 enlargement in Europe? That's the question, because on the answer to that question, it really depends whether the peace agreement's any good or not.
Well, General, thank you for being with us today of all days, and happy belated Veterans Day to you. We thank you for your service. We particularly want to draw on that service today in your time, especially at the head of NATO, to talk about this sort of, how do you deal with Putin? You were with us last month, and you said it was sort of a stall, strike, and try to gain territory strategy on the part of the Russian leader. Is that where we still stand now, and is there anything that President Trump can do to kind of make Putin change course in this, or is this a fool's errand?
Well, I think the general consensus, and a consensus that I share, is that as long as Putin believes he's winning, he's not going to be diverted from the course that he has pursued for 25 years. If he feels that he can gain something from a temporary pause that he can then break at will, with weak security guarantees, or blaming it on the Ukrainians, or going in another direction with his forces while holding in Ukraine, then he might choose to accept a peace agreement. But, you know, all of these agreements are difficult. We're looking at what's happened in Gaza, and despite the great leadership of President Trump and the vision of putting this forward and all of the pressure he's put on, it's still touch and go in Gaza. And here you're dealing with something that's just as intractable, in the sense that the Ukrainians don't want to give up their land. This is their land. And to give up all of Donbass, where there are hundreds of thousands of people living, where there's industry, where there's families, where there's history and cemeteries, and people have fought for this land. And if you give up all of Donbass, there's no real defensive position for Ukraine all the way to Kyiv and the Dnieper River. So it would be a huge strategic surrender by Ukraine based on trust in the United States. The question is, can they put that trust in the United States? Will we put our forces at risk? Because remember, what a security guarantee really means is that if there's a breach by Russia, if there's a preparation for a breach by Russia, it means that Europe and the United States would join forces and defend Ukraine. In other words, it's war. It's not that if Russia comes, then we'll talk about it and we'll get out of the way. That's not a security guarantee. So it's Ukraine is going to have to ask some hard questions, and I think the Europeans will ask hard questions too. Everyone wants a war to stop.
You framed that so well, General. When it comes to that trust, then, if this in fact is the scenario, how important is it for the Army Secretary to be there? Dan Driscoll is there. There are 2 4-stars in Kyiv talking to Ukrainians today. How significant is that, and what must the message be from our military?
It's really not a message the military can deliver. The military is a symbol of the United States. It really comes down to President Trump. And if he participates, if the U.S. participates in the security guarantee actively, now, he has said we won't put any troops there. Okay, so that's one mark against us because that weakens a security guarantee, the fact that the United States isn't on the ground. But you could still have a security guarantee if the Europeans were there in sufficient numbers and far enough forward. But a few European forces, say 10,000 men, multinational force, located around Lviv, ready to leave if there's a sign of trouble. No, that won't satisfy Ukraine, I don't think, and it won't deter Putin if and when he's determined to go forward. It may be that Putin is licking his wounds right now and saying, "Look, I'm just ready to stop. Give me something for it." But in that case, we should be driving a hard bargain, not giving up Donbass. That's just my impression from having followed this thing at very close range for a number of years. So many questions remain here, but it really does come down to the President of the United States. He's the man who is going to make the difference in peace and war in Ukraine.
Well, General, you mentioned that it comes down to the president, but we've also had a lot of other players in the administration, including Special Envoy Witkoff, who was rumored to be going to Turkey, and then officially we hear that those plans were canceled or never were in the works. But do you see European officials, are they going to be in town by the end of the week? I mean, this stuff has been moving so quickly in various stages. Can you expect that, they'll want to get in on this conversation very soon in Washington?
It could move for a lot of different reasons quickly. But remember, this war would stop instantly at the moment Putin says, I'm stopping the war. So he has it totally in his power to stop. He can stop it with an hour's notice. So really, when it stops is more a function of Putin than anything else. So the president will want to determine what is the minimum that Ukraine can give up to assuage Putin, keep him there, lock it in, and then what must be done to secure it by the Europeans. The Europeans have to be willing to put their men's lives on the line to secure this. That means they've got to be forward. It means they've got to have fighting capability, not an observer mission, not people in Humvees running around with radios and blue helmets reporting on what's happening. There may be some of that required to determine whether there's been a violation, but it's got to be backed up by hard power.
Come back to the Kennedy Center with us for a moment, General, because the president, of course, is there not to talk so much about Putin or even Ukraine, but Saudi Arabia. And we've seen a flurry of deals that have been announced that all invoke the prospect, or at least a question, of national security. They include advanced AI chips. They also include stealth F-35 fighter jets. The president talked about this a short time ago. Here's what he said.
It was great to be with you last night. I think it was something to behold. We officially designated the kingdom yesterday as the major non-NATO ally. That's a big deal. That happens seldom, very seldom, if at all. So I just want to congratulate you on that. That's a sign of trust.
So seldom. There are 18 nations that apparently enjoy that status, General, but the F-35s are a question, knowing that a special variant had been put together and designed for the Israelis, the F-35I, that allows Israeli military to plug directly into that system with their own avionics. Will Saudi Arabia have a similar arrangement with the United States? And doesn't that put the Saudis on par with the Israeli Air Force?
I believe there will be some kind of special arrangement. I think that'll have to be worked out in private discussions. This is an effort to advance the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia has been a reliable partner of the United States, despite what happened on 9/11 with some individual Saudis and all of the furor going on for that. But really for 80, 90 years. The United States and the Saudis have worked very, very closely together. And I will say also that their armed forces have rapidly improved over the last 30 years. They've come a long, long way from where they were, let's say, when they were aligned alongside us in 1990, 91 for the Gulf War, especially in the Air Force. The Air Force is excellent. It's got excellent equipment, and I know, of course, they want that F-35, and I think they'll be capable of employing it effectively and in conjunction with the United States and perhaps with Israel if the Abraham Accords go through the right way and if Iran remains a major security threat in the region.
Well, General, there certainly has been a lot of soft power at play yesterday and today in this Saudi visit. And I wonder, sometimes it might be okay in critics' view that Trump says, okay, this is a great gentleman. We have 80 years of a bond between our two countries. But do you have any concerns about the deals that are supposedly in the works yesterday and today, supposedly being approved, how those move into a hard power territory with a country that hasn't traditionally been an ally and maybe at the risk of national security to the U.S.?
Well, actually, Saudi Arabia has traditionally been an ally. Even back in the late 60s, early 70s, the United States relied heavily on Iran under the Shah and the Saudis as the twin pillar strategy in the Gulf. After the Brits had withdrawn from the Gulf, then we picked up the Saudis as a major ally. They weren't designated as a major non-NATO ally, but they were a major ally. We've done a lot over the years. We helped rebuild created the Saudi Arabian National Guard, their military. We've been with them. We provided them intelligence. We provided them military hardware. We've given them advisors. It's been decades and decades of excellent security relationship. And you can't forget that in 1990, when Saddam invaded Kuwait, Secretary Cheney went to Saudi Arabia. He talked to the king. That's when they accepted the presence of major U.S. forces there in Operation Desert Shield to deter a further Iraqi advance into Saudi Arabia and the eastern province oil fields. And that deterrence was successful. And then we went on in conjunction with Saudi forces that were allied and aligned with the United States in some of these operations. So it's been a long record of security cooperation. I don't think that's an issue, really.
Saudi Arabia is employing Russian-made air-to-ground missiles, though, correct? In our remaining moment, General, do you worry about the creep of technology transfer getting into the wrong hands?
Well, we always have to worry about this, but technology does migrate. You simply can't keep it secret. It's just the way it works in the world. And really, starting in 2014, when the Saudis formed OPEC Plus, there was an alignment of interests with the Russians. And that wasn't necessarily a bad thing at the time. And so we have to appreciate that Saudi Arabia is not the United States. It has its own position in the world. But in terms of advancing U.S. interests, they have been a reliable ally, and we would expect it to continue.